Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today, I am with Didier Sylvain, who is a life alignment coach, leadership trainer, and creative healing practitioner based in Los Angeles. His life mission is to create and hold transformative learning space for people to claim their power and to give their greatest gifts to the world. He leads Coherence, which is a leadership activation experience for creatives of color, as well as other deep dive programs that guide individuals and groups to become fuller and more integrated versions of themselves. And Didier is being so modest because not only is he a coach, but the reasons why I felt so called to invite him onto the podcast is because we both come from a musical background, an artistic background. And I'm always like, okay, who are these artists slash musicians who are now stepping into coaching? What's up with that? And so I'm really excited to just get to know more about Didier's story, as well as the journey that has led you specifically onto this path, especially because for me right now, I'm in this very beautiful, tender space of going back to reclaim that artist within me that I feel like has been somewhat dormant or neglected as I've been learning how to run a business, which is a whole nother skill set within itself. So welcome, Didier.
Drew McKay, thank you. Thank you so much for that gracious introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm so excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. Well, first of all,
and your people and the people.
Hey, okay. Well, what are you celebrating about yourself today?
I am celebrating a claiming of my voice. I've found that for a lot of years in my life, I've practiced this thing called self-silencing, where I've been so effective in creating space for others to unleash their own gifts and truths, and also in family context and relationships and community and friendships, and so much so that I forget what it is to care for and share the medicine of my own voice. And so I'm celebrating that voice has been gifted to me. It's gifted to all of us. And it's something I'm excited to wield and use with intention in service of the collective optimal good.
Let's take away your titles as a coach, as a creative healing practitioner, strip away all of those labels. And if you could describe what your medicine is, what would that be?
I'd say my medicine is it's a presence that draws forth full presence in others and draws out spirited truth from humans and people. That's one way I'd respond to it. I also would say my medicine is music. So I carry a medicine of playing with, organizing, working with vibration in intentional ways to move energy in ways that need to be moved for people to experience ease in their life and to experience whatever it is that they want to connect to, whatever is most meaningful to you that you'd like to connect to. Part of my medicine is supporting you to have the energy move in ways it needs to for you to connect.
Speaking of music and the movement of energy, I'm actually going to be playing Jay Phoenix. Jay Phoenix, come to the microphone.
Hello, greetings.
All right, so in the background, I am playing Didier's EP, which is called Flyscape. That was just released. So did you create this during the pandemic, by the way?
Yes. So it started, so first track started coming through in 2018, but it was really like in 2020 when it came together and just flowed through and put the head down and let the heart out and just all of it. Yeah. So thank you for appreciate you sharing this.
No, thank you for creating this and putting it out there into the world, especially in a time where it was just so easy for so many of us to give up hope, especially for the creatives who are so used to having a space to be able to express themselves, especially like I remember back in the day. Like I feed off of the energy of the crowd of people. And while we've been able to do that virtually, we've had to get creative with how to maintain that sense of connection. So, you know what, let's go into your ancestral lineage.
Sure, yeah.
Tell us about where your ancestors are from and how this has influenced your medicine and the ways you're showing up today.
Yeah, thank you for the beautiful question. So my most recent people are from Haiti. I was born and raised in New York, and haven't experienced much relationship with the land in Haiti growing up. Actually barely met some of my ancestors with living, and I, as someone that is a descendant of a people who, among other things, carry a revolutionary legacy, I have found myself, and also thinking about one of my great uncles, Didier Sylvain, who, among other things, was a journalist, a freedom fighter. He stood for the liberation of all people worldwide. He was attaché to King Melanek in Ethiopia. He, among also, like I have sensed, was a medicine worker. And as I think about the revolutionary radical spirit that stands for liberation from oppression for all people worldwide, I acknowledge him and I acknowledge my people. When I was the last time I was in Haiti was in 2016. And in a way that activated a conscious healing journey that opened up all types of things in my life, including coaching. It was because on that land, it was for the first time I experienced a kind of blessing from the ancestors to pursue creative healing practice as a vocation. And so I'm grateful for that. And I look forward to the next time I'll be making a trip there.
You said this was in 2016 that you went back to the motherland, and that's what sparked you onto the path of integrating the arts and coaching.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had visited Haiti before then, but that trip in particular, and there were a series of dreams that I had while there, that felt kind of like an initiation in a way to being in conscious relationship with spirit, and waking up to some of the gifts that, as you put it, like for me, like dormant, nascent, like less than conscious, including the gift of music, including the gift of guiding folks, so that's one way that I experience an influence and force of ancestry at work for me personally. And I appreciate the question.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I feel like everybody's like a coach, or people are, we could be very, very skeptical about like, oh, okay, maybe it just didn't work for you as a creative. And so you ended up going into coaching, and just the ways that I have now come to see it is that like coaching is just what we call it today, but really, like, and you don't even have to call it coaching, right? It's like, I think about our ancestors, who were the shamans, who were the healers, who were the medicine makers, the storytellers. we were the ones that, or they were the ones, and like we are the returning ones who are here to facilitate spaces of transformation, whether that manifests as the arts or as creating ciphers, right? Supporting people with getting, we were talking about edges before the recording, like supporting people with meeting those edges. So what were you going to say?
Yeah, and I love that. Yes, it's amazing, the opportunity to return and to reclaim some of these inherited gifts. And it's just what an abundance, a bounty, inheritance.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I appreciate part of what I see you doing with your work is creating space for folks to do that reclamation, to do that ancestral reclamation work. It's so important, so needed. So yeah, and I appreciate also what you alluding to, you know, some creatives, they stumble into coaching maybe because they perceive themselves as like a failed creative or something. And yeah, it's interesting. Like you're making me wonder, like, what are the relationships between creative practice and coaching, or like what synergies do you find between them, and what are some of the parallels and between being a vocalist and a coach? Is this like what I'm hearing you wonder? I think it's a beautiful.
Yeah. So let's explore that, because you have you teach about leadership for some pretty big institutions, Carnegie, the University of Notre Dame. I don't even know if I'm saying that right.
That's cool.
And then also you happen to be a PhD candidate in ethnomusicology for like Columbia University, and you have your other healing practices like your qigong and your sound healing. And so I am curious about what all of that integration looks like, or if you ever feel like you need to compartmentalize these different parts of you. And for those of you who are curious about who Jay Phoenix is, tell us who Jay Phoenix is.
Jay Phoenix is my musical project. It is a vehicle that has been supportive for me to share music with the world. Jay Phoenix is a name and a mythology in a way that emerged for me in the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. At that moment, I was longing to discover some stories and signs of the possibility of a people renewing themselves. And in that moment, the archetype of the phoenix and the myth of the phoenix just crossed my consciousness. And it also was a time when I stumbled upon Afrofuturist works, the work of Octavia Butler and the work of Sun Ra and Alice Coltrane and different artists, Black artists that have done so much incredible work that supports the Sankofic flow of looking back to create an emerging future. And I was like, this is dope, this is amazing. And it was in that moment that I started making music under the Jay Phoenix moniker. The J stands for Jovian, which is just a shout out to Jupiter, one of my ruling planets. So that's part of what that's about.
Yes, I love it. So tell us how you have been able to integrate yourself both as an artist and as a space holder. And then also I'm curious to learn about where Coherence was born from, if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So one of the ways that I'm finding music being integrated into all of my work, or one of the integrative forces with all of my work definitely, is working with sound and music, as I mentioned earlier. And so whether it's just working with sound over Zoom and just playing something at the right moment, just the, you know, when you just, there's just that perfect song, you know, that just needs to be played at this exact moment, and it just hits just in that way. You didn't plan it. It wasn't on the playlist. We're just like, you know what, this is the, and that to me is just such another powerful tool, often to support people to breathe with what's presencing for them, some discovery or some reckoning with a past experience, or a joy about like some future opportunity they might pursue in their work or their personal life. So that's one way that I find working with music shows up in my coaching work, and one way that it feels like just an integrative flow for me. But also I'd say like the integration of all these different parts of me, I think happens when I am just doing my best to do my relaxation practices and just relax. And so my morning I practice qigong, and that to me is, if tension is who you think you are, relaxation is like, if tension is who you think you should be, relaxation is who you are. And relaxation into the truth of who I am in the mornings like is as helpful as integrative practice. So qigong is supportive with that. There was a time in my life when I was just, I do music over here and I do coaching over here, and I can't actually share my music with the world necessarily. It's not, it won't be loved or won't be celebrated, or people will think, I'll be confused. Like, what do? You do music, you do coaching. Like, what exactly is going on here?
Yeah.
So I just have found that I don't need to curate how people perceive me. I can just be.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's one way that I relate to the question of like integrating the parts of who we be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look on my social media, I'm only now starting to share some of the rhymes that I used to do. I'm like feeling really inspired to write more, to create more, to play the piano again, and to not take myself as seriously, not pressure myself into being like, okay, I'm doing this because I want to make this a career. It's like, no, I'm doing this because I love it. And releasing the pressure to be perfect or perfectly put together. And
Jumake, as Jumake, everybody. Meet Jumake.
Yeah. But what has been so mind-blowing for me is to hear from my own clients or people who are interested in working with me, that they are inspired to be in my presence because of that creative part of myself that I once actually was like ashamed of, because in my 20s, I was like the broke and the struggling artist and the activist. And there was this fear of, if I were to charge for anything, then I would be a sellout. When now, many years later, I have found that the opposite is true, because I'm able to receive more, I'm able to give more, and finally, I have the spaciousness to create, versus like, I gotta make money off of this. Like now, it gets to be my soul offering to the world. And that's not to discredit anybody who's like, I want to do music and the arts full time. The way I see it is that our ancestors who were the artists were the healers, right? We're the culture keepers. And in my mother's village, which is in the south of Thailand, we have these Manora dancers, and they would dress as half bird, half humans. And whenever somebody was sick, they would call on these dancers to be the bridge between the ancestral and the physical realm to channel messages and healing. And so, you know, I even think about the temples and the art that was painted on the walls, which all told a story, preserving these legacies, and were lessons for us to integrate into our own lives. So
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, with everybody who's feeling this pressure to get more certifications, more degrees, more information, more knowledge, it's like, what would it be like for you to just create instead of constantly consume? Can we be the ones, embody the ones that we need, that we've been praying for? And so that's where I see both you and I are so much intersected in the medicine it is that we are bringing to the world today. Ancestors in the comeback.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that we necessarily need to throw away strategy or strategic thinking. Like sometimes it may feel strategic for you to invest in an experience or a program that may or may not include like the perception of you becoming more credible as a result. But but yeah, like what if your credibility is your birthright? You're credible because you're human, not because you have some letters after your name. You're credible, you're dignified because you're human, not because you went to such and such institution. You know, you're dignified because you are an inherently bountiful, gifted, luminous being that has medicine to offer, that has music to offer. And we're all just here to play our part in this orchestra of life.
You know what? Let's talk about what it means to MC your life.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's just explore that. Like,
let's explore that.
What does it even mean to be an MC for people who are new to, like, what is that? Like a wedding DJ?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is an MC to you? I mean, what in the tradition of hip hop, I mean, it's commonly known as an acronym, an abbreviation of a master of ceremony. But what is that? What does it mean to be a master of ceremony? What is mastery? What ceremony we're talking about?
If you're asking me, it's interesting because I feel like this year is also a deepening of my own role as a ceremonialist in my community. A lot of stuff is coming up for me as I say that because, you know, I did this birth doula training this past year. I've been dabbling into the realms of death with the near loss of my mother, and she's still here, thankfully. What else? I officiated my very first wedding for my best friend.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm like, oh my God, which one do I do? Am I a birth doula? Am I a death doula? Am I an officiant? And then it's just like, where are the intersections with all of these? Ceremony, holding space for rites of passages. And I'm only making that connection now as we're breaking down, okay, MC, master of the ceremony. Oh my God, like, because before, and I used to also struggle between like, am I a rapper or am I an MC? Wow, all of it is ceremony.
Amazing. Rejoice. I love that you are sharing that and also just coming to terms with that in this moment. Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, what comes up for me as you share that and just thinking about what it means to MC one's life and what is an MC, and I relate to it as if our life is an opportunity to honor what's important to us and to offer what we have to give. And we can be intentional with the containers that are most supportive to that. The containers, like what if our intimate relationships we relate to them as containers? What if we relate to our places of employment or our jobs as like a sacred space? Or what if we relate to like our homes as a sacred space? And so I think something that this opens up is inviting in a relationship with life as something sacred, and that we get to ritualize as often as we want and or need, to be intentional with being in integrity with our values and commitments, whether it's, you know, something as simple as just lighting a candle in the morning before you get on your day, or whatever else. And so yeah, for me, one way I relate to it is so the writer Carolyn Meese is someone who's inspired me a lot, and one of the ways that she talks about symbolic sight is something that really inspires me. So all these coincidences that happen in our lives and the synchronicities and the things that happen that seem so incredibly magical, like how did that happen? How did the universe just orchestrate this incredible unfolding and happening? And she talked about symbolic sight as like the ability to see these things happening, to see and interpret our lives symbolically, to interpret life's challenges symbolically, like whether it's, you know, a certain challenge I experienced, or I'm walking down the sidewalk and I pass a feather and it's like, oh, actually I've been thinking a lot about what it means to like think about my coaching business as a flight school, and like, oh right, like I get to talk about flight more in my coaching. So to me, like that's emceeing my life too. It's just like interpreting symbols and approaching everything as an opportunity for meaning making. To me is another approach to like emceeing one's life. It's like, you know, we get to just constantly make meaning in service of our commitments and what's important to us. And it doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to rhyme, but if it does, you know, that's cool too. But, you know.
Yeah, and something that I want to emphasize is how sometimes we can make meaning out of things that just like that are unnecessary, that are not in support of our dharma, because it's like, what is it that we're calling forth into our life? And especially because both you and I are also very passionate about social justice, right? Oftentimes we can focus on the things that aren't working, and then our subconscious mind will look for evidence to prove that that's true or that's real. And not even social justice, just like life in general, right? Like things aren't working out for me. Like, why me? Right? Or maybe you see like a black crow and you're like, oh my God, or black cat. It's like, oh my God, this is bad luck. Right?
Yeah.
Or
I'm just like,
I think about
F that. I was like, F that. Like, why is the black cat gotta be better?
Right, that too. Yeah. And so we get to make meaning out of it. And like, what would it look like to see that as like, as, I don't know, like we get to interpret it in the ways that feel good for us as well. Like I think about like dragonflies, and I remember I had this dragonfly that landed on my shoulder when I was on a boat in actually my mom's village, and it just stayed with me for at least an hour on the whole boat ride until I got off the boat. And I thought there was something wrong with its wing, and then it just like flew away. And then of course I get Wi-Fi eventually, and I'm like looking up what is the meaning of a dragonfly. And of course, like in some European culture, it's like dragonflies represent the devil. And then I look up like other more indigenous interpretations. I was like, oh, you know, like all is alive, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay. So which interpretation am I going to choose, or what am I going to create for myself that is in support of this vision that I have for me and who I'm becoming? So
I love that. I love that. And one thing I love about that is, I mean, you're describing that choicefulness, like that choice to interpret something that happened to you that is enabling, that's resourceful, that's positive, that energizes you. Like that's a choice, and that's a practice, which is another key component of emceeing, it seems. Like what if mastery, like we're talking about mastering ceremonies, is whatever you want to master. Like I want to master the drum. Like I'm investing in a hang drum. I want to master that instrument. And what if, or whatever, you want to master your business. And like, what if mastery is just that which becomes easier and more pleasurable with practice?
Yeah.
Full stop. And we get to just be in conscious relationship with filling our life with conscious practices. And that means that messing up is part of it. And that's part of the journey. That's part of the learning. So to MC is also to be in conscious practice with something that you stand for.
Yeah. I love that. How is it that you are facilitating these kinds of spaces for others to deepen their practice, their awareness of self? So like, yeah, tell us more about Coherence.
Yeah, I was thinking to say, like, how are you gonna say, so what about that MC school you and I are gonna start? So we can talk about that later.
Yeah. I'm down.
Yeah, coherence. Yeah, and you alluded to this earlier, so thanks again for bringing it back. So coherence is something very dear to me. Coherence is it's my main group. It's my main group program, my main group coaching program. It's a life alignment and leadership activation experience that is targeted for creatives of color that are interested in integrating the full truth of who they are and have an interest in creating some greater impact and experiencing greater freedom, and perhaps, yes, like calling in greater income. Like that's all available and welcome. And it's my first main group coaching program in that towards those things. It was born in 2020. So after the murder of George Floyd, and we saw what we saw on the streets and our organizations and media, I was feeling and continue to feel that now is a time to elevate and lift up Black leadership in the world. That's what I was feeling in that moment. And the first cohort was amongst Black men and masculine identified folks. In that moment, it was an experiment, learned a lot. It was my first group coaching program that I had created and led solely. Done lots of other group work with partners, and have since iterated, experimented. I've done it a handful of times now, at least, and am excited to, it's broadened to a target, an audience, and niche and community of creatives of color. And I use the word creative because it's intentionally open and flexible and versatile. It calls forth those of us who have an impulse to generate something new in your own life, or maybe it's an artifact or project. I use the word creative because it's versatile. It also invites in those who might identify as creatives, whether you're a professional artist or you have a crafting practice. And I call forth, I use the word creative to call forth the creators that we all are. I mean, we've been talking about that like this entire conversation. So, I'm happy to use that term because of its flexibility. And of color, because we also need some spaces that are explicitly open opportunities for folks to see through and see with each other's experiences, lived experiences with a particular race and gender lens that is just more conducive to experiencing the possibilities of liberation and decolonizing the internalized structures and stories that no longer serve us. So that's a little bit about Coherence. It is a love of mine, and also been a space where a lot of experimentation has happened. So I've created a card deck that's been birthed out of this community. There's journals that are being created and written coming out of this community. So it also is a laboratory for co-creation.
I love it. And I love that word coherence, because when I hear it, I think about the heart frequency, right? And how it's like when we're able to exercise the heart as much as the mind, if not more than the mind, then that there's so much medicine in that, because colonization has gotten us to operate from the neck up. And so what are the ways that we can tap back into these other parts of our being that have just been so pushed down from the need to strive and to like hustle and to pressure ourselves into producing versus creating for the joy of it, letting go of like, I need to make this into a career, but like, what would it look like for you to just like do the things that bring you joy, that bring you pleasure, and just explore or just be open to surrender. What will come of this? I'm not so sure. To lead with curiosity and play and pleasure. And I know that times can feel really challenging right now. Like, who am I to create? Who am I to be in my joy when it feels like things are crumbling around me? And so how does this space actually help to contribute to the liberation that you speak of?
Yeah, I love it. Totally. Thank you for sharing that. and just amplifying the power. You know, we know that words are spells and our words have meaning and power. And so just amplifying like what coherence creates. I'd also say, I would add that to your point around the so-called Western colonization and internalization of intellectualizing our way through life and is living our life from the neck up. I have spent a lot of time codifying frameworks and methodologies and tools and all these things that I love, and it's so much fun to me to create content and tools. And in the past couple of years, I have been falling in love with the possibility of leading from the center of the chest in life. And in part because I've learned, oh my gosh, there are angels in my chest. There are angels in there. And I fly with the angels living in my chest. That's actually when I'm most alive. And other people can do that too. There's a commander in the chest that can do a whole lot more than you might even conceive. So coherence also, yes, calls forth a life that leads with love, not instead of just thinking of the gifts of the mind. Like the mind is a gift, the body is a gift, and the heart is a commander. So salute and get in formation. So that's part of what coherence calls forth. I also use the word coherence because literally the two sounds, or there are 3 syllables in it, but the first 2, I think about like what does it mean and look like in practice to cohere, meaning to listen with life, as a partner with life, rather than as a prisoner to it. So it's also shout out to that type of relationship with life that's available to each and every single one of us.
I love it. I love it so much. So tell us, what is it that grounding practice, qigong. I know you have so many tools under your belt, but what are some of the other things that you are doing to stay grounded in these times? And also, what is it that you've had to learn to release?
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Drew McKay, your questions are extraordinary, extraordinary, and just dope. So
we're going to turn this into a track.
Yeah.
Actually, it technically is. I like if you're listening and you're enjoying the sounds in the back, let me know if I should keep doing this on my interviews, because I'm feeling it.
Yeah. Let you know.
I'm gonna play Jay Phoenix on all of my podcasts now.
Please feel free. Yeah. So one of the grounding practices that's been really supportive to me is working with flower essences. And I just recently have remembered, wow, flower essences saved my life. Like, it's time to get back into it. And so recently I've started exploring and experimenting with that again. Flute practice, like just playing the flute is just a meditative practice for me that's super supportive. I first got into flute from my first and only trip to Japan, and I was there and met a shakuhachi maker, like a indigenous Japanese flute maker, who said to me, this is just blowing Zen. It's just blowing Zen. And that's what it is to me. It's a really supportive practice to bring and expand awareness. The other things I'd say, like, I do my best to stretch, I'm, just like never played out.
Yeah.
And some of the things I'd say I'm releasing. So I'm definitely releasing an attachment to speed. This is a general observation in my life. So my sun sign is Sagittarius, and I grew up playing soccer, or football, as we say around the world, and played right wing, and prided myself and was revered because of my speed. And I find that that's how I've moved through life often. to get things done as quickly as possible, to get answers, to solve problems, to resolve conflicts as quickly as possible. And that sometimes is useful, like in moments of crisis or in moments of, I don't know. Speed can be useful, and it's not the only pace. It's not the only way to be. Pace. So pace is a practice I'm bringing, like thinking about like what speed am I going right now, and is that right, like with what's called for right now. Slowing down is the name of the game in 2022, and I'm excited about that.
Same here. I actually just started reading this book called Do Nothing: How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. Are you familiar with that book?
I am. I was gifted to me from a friend, Alex Held. Yeah.
Funny, yeah. By Celeste Headley, and what pulled me to is because it has a picture of a sloth on the cover. I'm like, okay, that is what I'm calling for. Then like, we've demonized sloths when they can actually be such good teachers with how to live life.
Totally. We've demonized them, we've villainized them. They're just bad because they don't do anything and they just sit there and like, well, sometimes that's called for.
Yeah, and they bring so much joy to the world. We can learn a lot from them, and like so that is what I'm calling for. That, yes, sloth energy, sensual sloth energy. That's my whole vibe this year and for the rest of my life.
Claim it.
I'm wearing fishnets under this because I'm going to dance class later, FYI.
I love it.
Okay.
Amazing.
So what is a ritual or practice or words of wisdom that you can leave people with as an offering?
Drew McKay, thank you. So I would love to offer a prayer that is a kind of healing current that I believe is something that we can name any moment that we forget and or would like to remember that collective healing is happening and wholeness is happening and divine order is happening. It goes a little something like this, and there's a call and response. So Drew McKay, if you feel it, you're welcome to. Like, are you open to doing a little call and response right now?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. And if you're listening to this, like, you're welcome to just rock this call and response and see what unfolds.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Life.
Life.
People say life. Yeah.
Life.
Health. Yeah. Health.
Health.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Life.
Life.
Health.
Health.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Open paths.
Open paths.
Health in the body.
Health in the body.
Peace in the spirit.
Peace in the spirit.
And love in the heart.
And love in the heart.
Health in the body.
Health in the body.
Peace in the spirit.
Peace in the spirit.
And love in the heart.
And love in the heart.
It is this we wish for ourselves.
It is this we wish for ourselves.
And all our relations.
And all our relations.
May it be so.
May it be so. Beautiful. One of my mentors, Nobuko Miyamoto, she has a song that goes, Mitakoe oyasi, to all our relations. So I'm always reminded of her whenever I hear that. And the song that's playing in the background is Prayer Pond by none other than Jay Phoenix. Then I have one more question for you. If you can envision yourself as a future ancestor, what is it that your future ancestral self would say to you or to the rest of us in this very moment?
Spread your wings. Will be the first thing. And then a future, I think as a future ancestor, keep breathing. That's all.
And be conscious of your breath because we're always breathing. Be conscious of it and tap into the angel that is within you, within your hara, within your chest, your belly, your heart, so that you can continue to increase this coherence that is the mycelium connecting us all back to our truth, our path, as we are all finding our way back home to the stars. I'm really excited to start this other training with you, by the way. Both Didier and I signed up for this psychedelic liberation training, and who knows what is going to unfold from this. If you are interested in being put on the wait list for our emceeing school, please message me. And in the meantime, where is it that people can go to find you?
They can find me at myfullname.com is my website, and they can find me on social media, Instagram, _my full name, _. Hit me up.
And if you're wondering how to spell that, please look at the show notes. I'll link that, as well as a link to this amazing EP that you can also play as you are deepening your practice and awareness and coherence. Thank you so much, Didier, for ciphering with me today.
So much fun. So much fun. So much fun. Thank you, Emcee. I appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate your gifts, your joy, your presence, and looking forward to the next one.